Is Joe Burrow a dynasty sell? That and other offseason pivot opportunities in the dynasty marketplace. Welcome to the Football Guys Dynasty Show. And Jordan, bring out the flamethrower, because here we are talking about how to improve your dynasty team. And you're going to start at quarterback with Mr. Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow's, I think, a classic cautionary profile. I like the player. I think I enjoy watching him play, but from a fantasy football dynasty perspective, he has one hit. That's a precarious position, right? That one hit threshold is always, you're standing on a ledge. It's not a top 6 hit. He comes in at finishing his 8. So there is a difference there in terms of historically. He's 18th in expected points. So he way outproduces that. He outproduces it by 9 expected. He's 9 touchdowns better than his expectation, which again, all of those things are danger. There's a volume concern there with him as well. Given the fact that he's 20th in terms of actual attempts per game, and you sort of add it up and that is and you put that at the top 5, top 6 of dynasty costs at the quarterback position. That's a hard out. You sell that at its absolute right now. Like, this could be an absolute ceiling situation. And the other thing I would say about him is, even if we're wrong, and he ends up becoming great, he's probably not going up in cost. Would be the other thing. Like, if he's the difference at that cost between quarterback 3, 4, 5, whatever he's going to settle in at, and 2, right? I don't think he's going to jump Mahomes. The cost there, right? It's all downside risk. It's not really any upside reward. So I think he's an easy one to pivot off of this year based on all of those factors.
Yeah, and it's highly competitive up there at the top of the quarterback board. And that's the biggest thing. I mean, he has the weakest, in my opinion, and I think you've said the same thing, he has the weakest profile of the ones going up there. You got Mahomes, you've got Justin Herbert, who's been a two-time prove it to me guy, and did that right away. Burrow was merely a flash-laden player a year ago. And you mentioned a lot of big plays, a lot of touchdown, and not enough rushing. To be fair, to get all the way home as QB1, QB2 overall, you got to rush the ball. Unless you're Tom Brady, that good, that historically great as a passer, and big volume, by the way, for Brady. I mean, you've got to run the ball. And Burrow, to date, and yes, he's coming off a massive injury. We'll see about next year being a big litmus test for that rushing. He's got to get all the way home. So when you talk about Herbert, Prescott, Mahomes, Allen, I mean, it is just laden up there at the top. We didn't even talk. What if Deshaun Watson comes back playing this next year, new team or otherwise? That's a huge piece to overcome as well. So when you start saying you're priced at your ceiling at QB, 4, 5, 6, he's going to go very highly on Superflex boards. And you say it's all downside. I agree with all of that. What would you say in terms of a target player? Is it moving upwards? Is it paying Burrow and a late first and getting one of your select 1 or 2 up at the top of the board? Is it moving down to maybe a Russell Wilson? What do you think is that optimal value perspective to move around with Burrow?
I think you have a couple of different ways you can go. And I thought you were joking. And when you said before the show, like, oh, you could go down to Prescott. And I was like, no,
it's like Anchorman. I thought it was a joke. I thought you were kidding.
I was like, and so I actually looked up a couple of resources. I was like, well, wait a second.
I deadpanned that text. I would like, you mean like Dak Prescott plus?
Right. I would run over my 1-year-old to take Dak Prescott plus for Joe Burrow. I mean, it would be, I wouldn't stop. Honey, I'll be back in a minute to check on you. I mean, that's the level of urgency which I would do that deal. So, I mean, that's one. I mean, I think going up to Herbert makes some sense. I think going up to Josh Allen, I would pay the price to go from Burrow to Mahomes. I mean, this is just by context. This is Burrow's best year. Again, this is year 2. This is a really good year for Joe Burrow. Everything broke right. Quarterback 8. Everything went horribly for Mahomes, right? Horribly for Mahomes. And according to to the same metrics that I used to say that Burrow's 8, Mahomes is 4. right? So everything went bad for Mahomes. Everything goes good for Burrow. Mahomes still better, right? So I would pay. That is a price that, I mean, historically, that's a price that's every penny of that I would pay. Every penny of that I would pay, because it ends up being a big difference historically.
Yep. And we had a similar type conversation about Herbert last year. He was a one-hit guy. Let him prove it to you. The quarterback position is one, slow play it. You don't have to be the first one in, that you're like, oh, I got the VIP tickets. I reserved them 9 months ago. And here I am. I'm first in line. You're waiting overnight for the opening of some store or concert or whatever. You don't have to do that. Just wait. Bring the lawn chair. Make sure you got a good place to sit. We're old. We want to be comfortable. Like, we're at that place in our lives. We're on the back nine, to have a golfing reference. So that's the sort of thing. There's going to be values every single year to pivot. And I think Burrow, you're trying to be first in line. You're trying to be the smartest guy in the room. How about you just be the safest guy in the room, and you just be the most insulated and the easiest, just surface level fishing pole. The bait's right there. Just take the hook. Take the worm. It's pretty easy. There's a lot of good values every year at quarterback. You just got to find those pivots. And Burrow is the one to pivot off of for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Wide receiver here. And I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers, because this is a guy who has been highly regarded. You can't really say anything bad about him, it seems like, in Dynasty. Oh, I can. AJ Brown. He is high up. He's in the top 8 for, I would say, globally, basically everybody views him as that level. Well, he's not my top 12. And here's the reason. 3 seasons so far, and it's competitive up there. Just like quarterback, it's competitive at the top of the wide receiver board. His high water mark by my seasonal measures, wide receiver 12 in adjusted points per game finishes. So you're saying a guy that is firmly in his prime, he's played 3 years, he's considered an early success, and his best year is wide receiver 12. That to me is ripe with, are you sure he's really, really good? Because he's got an okay quarterback. The DNA of this team is not throw the ball all around the yard and make AJ Brown the best fantasy wide receiver ever. There's so many pivots, because he's had one top 24 season in adjusted points per game, and it's wide receiver 12. There's so many guys behind him. It's laughable. So I'm going to go with low-hanging fruit. Jordan, you want to guess who my pivot's going to be?
Amari Cooper. Mike Evans.
All right. Yeah, Mike Evans. There you go. Mike Evans. How about this? I bet you can get Mike Evans in a first.
I bet you're right.
Because you're drifting like wide receiver 20 maybe. Evans is falling through the floor. What does he do? I don't know. Produce well. Over and over and over again. And now people are saying, well, he's too old to do it again. We should have given him more credo. Now we don't. So I really think AJ Brown for Mike Evans in a first is obtainable. You might even be able to get a little bit more. Maybe get a little sweetness on top of that even. And we know what that first can do in the trade market. So it's the perfect two-way go. I think Evans is a decent bet to outscore AJ Brown the next 2 seasons. So you're saying I get a pick. I get a player that is probably a better shot to score more now. And now you're going to get to what? 27 years old for AJ Brown, where you finally start to maybe sort of win this deal. So the number of seasons that Evans has had that's superior to AJ Brown's best season so far, it's a laughable comparison in my perspective. And you're really chasing age. You're not chasing a better quarterback. You're not chasing a better situation. If Julio didn't work out or doesn't work out, they're going to address the position. I just think Brown is, if he was wide receiver 14, 12, we wouldn't have this conversation. The fact that some people have him 5, 6, it's ridiculous. Yeah. Prove it to me. Show me something first. Show me something that's requisite. Do a Deebo Samuel type season, and then we can talk. And he hasn't. He hasn't. Wide receiver 12. He's been nominal over the course of his career so far compared to his cost.
He's a similar cautionary note, I think, to Jamar Chase, because if you look at how their early career production, very similar in terms of volume, in terms of way overperforming in terms of touchdowns, right? You sort of get that early jolt. And then, a couple
people
years later,
project greatness.
Right, you're standing there looking around, and you're doing the Travolta, and you're like, "What?
Show it to me. You haven't done it. Where are we?"
Right,
and then
right.
Again, it's the be early, right? I drafted Burrow in my startup draft at 104 in a super flex startup because I want to be the smart guy. Yep. I drafted AJ Brown at 106 after he had his wide receiver 12 season, assuming that would be the worst case scenario going forward. Now, where do you sit? He finished in the 20s, I think, this year. Get out of here.
Right.
So what'd you get? You got a marginal guy. You got Hunter Renfrow minus the first year removed from drafting him.
Right.
And now you're going to keep him way up there. Right. All right. What do you think about a running back? Who you got?
I think Javonte Williams. I mean, if you could go Javonte Williams right now, I'm seeing him at running back 4 in some spots. If you can go to Javonte Williams to Christian McCaffrey plus, I can like Javonte Williams. And this is a situation that we're seeing. You know, I put out a Twitter poll today, and it was like 3-1 people liking Antonio Gibson over Josh Jacobs, which, he just doesn't have enough receiving upside. He was like top 5 at the position in like a lot less games. Like,
Raiders are in the playoffs for a few reasons. One reason is Josh Jacobs.
Right.
I have that same question. Why do people not like Josh Jacobs, Jordan?
I don't know. Someone, and I honest to God, I want to get to the bottom of it, and I don't know what it is. But I've gone to ask people.
I think it's the ceiling. I think it's because he hasn't been elite yet.
Well, he's hit 2. I mean, here's
but what I mean is, know what I mean though. I mean he didn't rise up to be like Jonathan Taylor minus in a season. He didn't run for 1,800 yards. He didn't he wasn't running back 4 in a I think that's what it is. Mm-hmm. Just being good, just being plug and play, being a touchdown or 2 touchdown threat every single game you play, and having untapped upside still is not enough.
Man.
And the Raiders are one of the least sexy offenses in the NFL.
Right.
I don't know. I think it's all that stuff.
Yeah, and we'll see what it looks like in the offseason. But you basically, the good thing about him is you've seen both sides now, right? We actually haven't seen that with a guy like Gibson, right? You haven't seen with a guy like Javonte Williams. You haven't gotten sort of elite production in any way. Like we've seen Josh Jacobs be really good as a runner. We've seen him a high-end rushing touchdown guy. We've seen him actually now do a lot of receiving volume. Right? This is like the Fournette.
Just not all connected.
Right. This is the pre-Fournette like mega superstar.
Put it together. Right. I mean, imagine the Raiders bringing back the band. They got Derek Carr, who's underrated himself. Imagine if they get wide receiver right. Henry Ruggs didn't work out. Bryan Edwards has been a massive disappointment. They bring in Deshaun Jackson, Zay Jones. These are Band-Aids. These are just we're trying to survive and do something this year to some requisite placeholder level. But imagine if they get it right. That's an attractive spot for a wide receiver in free agency to land, a notable splash. So if they get, I do think there's untapped upside there. And so imagine this team where they give the ball to Josh Jacobs inside the 5, but imagine just more space for him in the passing game because Darren Waller's not the de facto wide receiver 1 here.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited about the Raiders. They're playing with a fullback. I likened it to, they're kind of playing offense like it's 1992. Doesn't it remind you of they got Moose Johnson out there. They're running play action from under center. They're doing a lot of old school stuff in a new age game. It works. Right. They win games. They execute well. But it's just not really flashy for today's highlight reel sort of, and Josh Jacobs turning a 3-yard gain into a 7-yard gain is not SportsCenter worthy. So it just does not move the needle there. Do you think Javonte Williams is this another case of like the player, really don't like the price?
I mean, ahead of McCaffrey just seems... I mean, even here's the problem with that would be, even if over the next 3 years, Javonte Williams scores more points than McCaffrey, one of those guys has the ability to make make the earth turn on a different axis.
Score 30 points per game.
Correct. One of those guys I don't think has that. Right. And so even if the one thing I would say about these types of deals, and I've gone to looking at these deals a lot recently, is one of these sides of you can lose a deal on paper and actually not lose. The consequence of losing isn't that great. Right. And I think this is a classic example of going from Javonte Williams is probably good enough that it might hurt, but it's not going to kill you. Where if you land the McCaffrey side of a deal like that, like McCaffrey can, vanquish thy enemies like in one fell swoop. And like, he's the type of player that again, the earth, like he can change the way that the earth rotates in your dynasty league. I mean, that's the level of impact that he can have. He's a walking 20 points per game threat. Right? He walks out of bed and you project him for that, which is incredible. And so that
quarterback chaos in Carolina, be damned. It doesn't matter.
Him and DJ Moore, it's incredible, right? Like they without anything, right? Those guys
imagine them with good quarterback play.
Could you imagine? Like
you have to imagine because it hasn't happened.
Right. Like if they had a Watson, or if that was a landing spot for Rodgers or Wilson, one of these guys, like that maybe not, maybe Wilson's a bad example, but you sort of look at all of these guys and what that situation's really ripe. And I don't know. I mean, I think people are overestimating Javonte Williams, and probably at the expense of some other guys. And again, if you can get a first, like you might for a first plus be able to pull down a guy like Zeke, right. And I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to look at that pivot.
And if you're 15 spots in the positional rankings ahead of Josh Jacobs, I mean, what's that plus?
Right.
So, and yeah, it feels like there's two names I thought of from last offseason. First of all, I thought about the scenario of AJ Dillon before Aaron Jones came back, right? He zoomed up. He didn't zoom up to running back 5 in Dynasty or something like that, but he zoomed up a lot. And then what happened? Situation changed. Who's to say Melvin Gordon isn't back? Who's to say, like, I'm all about Mike Boone. Let's have Mike Boone injury away this coming year. I'm highly invested with a roster spot, price tag in Mike Boone for offseason purposes. But Broncos probably doing something at the running back position. It's not just going to be those two guys and some UDFA that's going to play special teams. That's probably not the case. But to say that they don't bring back Melvin Gordon and like, we really want to have a 2 running back system a la Green Bay. We need to have 2 guys. They're that important to this offense. So to say that they're not going to do that or bring in somebody else, and then all of a sudden it's more of a committee than you want, and you just paid elite prices in a startup draft or a trade, or again, having him and not doing something. That's the real danger. And I'll say this, you were a competitive team last year. Like I have one team, Javonte Williams on my taxi. I think I brought him up because of that streaming game late in the season. But what you just said, the opportunity to have a locked and loaded team and add McCaffrey for somewhere around the equal perspective from Javonte Williams, that's hard to say no to. As long as you're quasi-competitive. And again, everyone's quasi-competitive. It's January.
Right.
So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, for sure.
You're listening to the Football Guys Dynasty Show, episode 86 with Chad Parsons, Jordan McNamara. And we're finishing out here looking at pivots. And my pivot at tight end is a name that we really haven't talked about since the offseason. And you know what? It's another offseason. It's another overrated, bloated cost for out of sight, out of mind, Irv Smith. Because he basically gets a complete pass. And I thought of you, Jordan, when I was coming up with this, because this feels a little bit like
I know exactly what you're going to say. I know exactly.
I'm alluding to a situation to the southern part.
When you spend 5 years every Tuesday
recording a lot. Yeah, having many a conversation. This feels very Dallas-esque because what did we have? Irv Smith, injury, Blake Jarwin in this scenario. Now we have a pretty unheralded guy, Tyler Conklin, come in. Performed well. He was a streamer for us. Not a high impact guy, but definitely exceeded any expectations you had coming into this year of getting someone relevant from the tight end position for the Vikings. So you have Conklin in the mix, and to assume that he's going to be out of the mix, that they do not resign a good player in Tyler Conklin that finished higher than Irv Smith ever has in 2021. So that's the situation just there. But yet Irv Smith is still in that maybe tight end 12 to 16 kind of zone of price. You need to have top 6 upside, or at least imagination, dreams from that spot if you're going to invest that highly, or else just wait at tight end for that valuation. You need to have legitimate upside. So we have Irv Smith, a guy that's never done anything. His best season was tight end 24 or so in adjusted points per game, and he missed this year with injury. Round 2 pedigree, but he's done little to project a top 6 to 8 season. Here's my pivot. How about you get one of the most productive tight ends in the NFL currently for his profile? How about you get that plus like a second? And you know who that is? It's someone I think that still holds a record at the tight end position, and that's Zach Ertz. 31 years old. He's been there, done that with multiple teams, comes right into Arizona, and what are you doing? You're starting the guy. So he has 6 top 12 finishes, one of the strongest production profiles in the NFL, as I mentioned. And what do you got with Irv Smith? He's not only competing with Tyler Conklin, who, if he's any good, Minnesota's going to bring him back. A lot of free agents go back to their team. And then you're competing with Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook. Now KJ Osborne is a factor in that passing game. You got all that going on, and you want to value that guy like I got 2 tight ends, and Irv Smith is a critical one of them, and he costs a requisite amount there in the top 15. I'm all out. I was all out on I expected to see him, honestly, at like tight end 20, 22 in early ADP. No. No suit for you, no discount. And I was like, but he still hasn't done anything. He was injured this past year. He's not a round 1 guy. Like, no, he doesn't fit any of that qualifier. He's a tweener-sized guy. Oh, so all those things, Conklin outproduces them, and it's like, no discount. We're still all in on Irv Smith. Great to know. I'm all out.
Yeah, and he hasn't really done. He wasn't really that productive at Alabama either, right? And so that's the interesting aspect.
It's going to take him dive bombing in 2022 before the market corrects.
Yeah, and he's basically like 10 spots ahead of Conklin in some rankings, which is just.
I mean, it's shades
Smith,
of Dalton Schultz, right?
Dalton
Schultz.
Yes, it's Dalton Schultz.
And I remember we started the offseason, and you either texted or we talked, and you were like, "So why Blake Jarwin over?" Like, because I was a little more on team Jarwin.
You were,
like,
yeah.
You're like, why?
Right.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
This guy was the starter. He did pretty well, and now this guy has to come get his job back.
Right.
And they played. What's funny is the two of them played equal snaps ish early in the season. And it was all Schultz in terms of the actual production. Jarwin was just out there.
Right.
He was out there like, can I please get 1 target? They're like, no. No, Schultz gets them all.
Yeah.
Shut up and block. Shut up and draw coverage until October, and everyone realizes that you're not getting the ball.
Yes.
Buy us some time.
Yeah.
But Irv Smith is going to be probably the same thing. And even if he does, quote unquote, hit, I think it's going to be more Jonnu Smith-like of like, oh, there's some NFL value there. But it's not like, because even Jonnu Smith at his peak, it was like, why isn't he being utilized more? Kind of like a hybrid quasi tight end sort of player. And he just doesn't pan out fantasy wise.
Right.
So I think that's kind of where we're going to be with Irv Smith. So gotta be a discount. So there you go. All 4 skill positions, 4 potential high leverage pivots, relatively high up in the position. Some of them very high in the top 5 or so. So we got a lot of trades to discuss, and like George Costanza, we're going to tell you about it. So let's start out with a big trade here involving Josh Allen. So super flex format, we've got Dalvin Cook, aging, 27 coming up this coming season. Tyreek Hill and Matt Ryan, who is worth a bag of bolts. Maybe you have to give a few bolts back to get the bag of bolts because he's going for almost. Someone told me, Jordan, that they got Matt Ryan in Superflex, trading back in the rookie draft alone from like 209 to the mid-3rd. Literally just given Matt Ryan. Yeah. You're like, oh my dear God. Yeah. I literally thought that was a startup draft, and I thought to myself, well, that means Matt Ryan went ahead of 209, so that makes no sense.
Like something's wrong here. Something's wrong here.
But 209 in a super flex
today, and didn't get it. But
2/3 is that what you said?
Yeah, I was like, I'll give a couple thirds. And
so
the guy
so again, this is
okay.
Dalvin Cook, Tyreek Hill, Matt Ryan for Josh Allen and a 23 second.
I mean, you're going to sit here a year from now, and which are you going to regret being on the Dalvin Cook, Tyreek Hill side?
You better win the title, right?
You're probably not going to regret being on the Josh Allen side. It would be, and that's in 2 years, which side are you going to want to be on?
So if Tyreek Hill or Dalvin Cook misses a chunk of this next season, it's not even going to be 2023 by the time you regret it.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I've done different versions of this type of trade where it was actually for Dak Prescott, and it was a cheaper cost. But I think I'd do this. I mean, you're looking at back-to-back. It depends on how you measure this, but back-to-back quarterback one by our default scoring at Footballguys. There's only been, again, depending on how you measure this, there's only been one guy that's done that. It's either Dante Culpepper or Peyton Manning, depending on how you do it. You look at guys that have gone multiple QB1s over the past stretch. It's been Brady, it's been Breeze, it's been Peyton, it's been Culpepper, right? And so you sort of look at these guys, he's already in an elite tier. He's done it more than, in actuality, he's done it more than Mahomes has, right? So I don't know if they're like, I would still take Mahomes over him, but you're looking at, he should be the number 2 asset in Dynasty. I'm talking myself into it. And the problem is I watch him play every week and it doesn't make me totally feel warm and fuzzy, but you sort of look at the end product and it's like extremely high value. And so I mean, I think you pay the cost that it takes to get up there, and you can figure out ways to replace Tyreek Hill, even though it seems like it's hard right now.
I think you're really hitting the opposite side of the trade I thought you were going to hit, which is
interesting.
Well, I mean, you hit it at the beginning, but just you're selling a 27-year-old running back, which one more good year. I mean, the peak window is ending. So, and Dalvin Cook, he had a lot of times just kind of running into guys this year. Like, I think just his whole aggregate workload is kind of coming to fruition. Maybe was he dinged up? I mean, but I think that train is coming to, like, I rapidly moved him down in my post 2021 adjustments and analysis of where he is. So 27 years old, like, he could fall like a freight train. Tyreek Hill, he's morphing into like a little slot centric jitterbug. Like, the deep plays weren't there this year. And that's boding well for the Chiefs in terms of moving the ball, sustaining drives. They're still winning, all that kind of stuff, but just, he's 28 as well. There's zero insulation on that side of the deal. I like all those pieces, but I mean, the second on there is laughable. Like, that's actually the funny part to me. Like, he's like, who came up with that?
Right.
Because if you gave up Josh Allen, you'd be like, yeah, let me take out the second. Maybe that was a first. You like to know how these negotiations work. Like, let's have a first in there. Make it a second, then I'll give you Allen. Right. But yeah, like you said, I mean, 12 to 18 months from now, it's a train wreck. If they flags fly forever, so if you win the title, but that's a one-off scenario of feeling pretty good about it. But yeah, this is gonna be a tough one. And what's bad is the quote that came out with this deal is I lost in the title game. I desperately need to upgrade my quarterback spot with a true anchor. They actually thought by buying Allen, they were going to get ripped in the forum for overpaying.
No.
And this would be a different conversation if it was 2 years ago, right? 2 years ago, in the sense of Dalvin Cook 20 coming up on age 25, Tyreek Hill 25 into 26-year-old season. That's a different calculus of time frames, assuming Allen where he is now.
Yeah, I mean,
I just think the age is a big aspect.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think you're hitting these guys that are probably their peak. I bet you by the time the end of August rolls around, these guys are all worth less in terms of Dalvin Cook, Tyreek Hill, and Matt Ryan, and like, you're getting what's a top 2 dynasty asset, Superflex. Like, you do that deal, and you know what? And the best part about doing it right now, like, I'm actually going back through for finishing up AOD 2022. I'm going back through a Mahomes deal I did like this week last year, and I ended up winning the title. I'm going back through that team. I paid a lot to do that deal, and I would do it. I would again in a heartbeat. You know what I mean? I would do it again in a heartbeat because even though I gave up a lot of guys that I liked, and I gave them up. Yeah, I gave up Stafford in that deal. Like, Stafford was the Matt, right? It was a higher price in a lot of ways to pay. But still, the difference-making potential that a trade like that has.
Well, just the anchor point, right? It makes your management easier at a premium position,
right? And you've got security locked in now at a higher level, and you can spend the rest of the offseason sort of figuring out ways that you say, okay, well, now I know I have to sort of fill in I can take different shots on like Keenan Allen, for example, like I've got a late first in a rookie draft. I can take a shot on a Keenan. Like, you have all of this time to sort of make those ancillary deals. I love this deal.
Well, it's like an NFL team too. You don't have to chase quarterback, right? You don't have to go for it in like, oh, well, I'm overpaying in the aftermarket, or I'm continually trying to fix it in rookie drafts. Like, it takes all that away. And I remember a Superflex team. I got stuck, quote unquote, stuck a few years ago at 101. I tried to move out of there, and I picked Mahomes because I was there, and I was never worse than middle of the road, even in my like a building year where it's like, I'm still trying to figure everything else out. Like, he was just pulling me towards at least like fringe playoff. I can't even remember if I made the playoffs in that year, but like, and he's still there. He'll still be there years from now, in the sense that now you can spend all your time and energy fixing everything else and playing. Even if you play a committee game at quarterback 2, having a QB1 anchor just makes it so much easier and premium, as opposed to trying to figure everything out.
Right.
Like
especially if you get 2 of these guys, right? If you're pairing Allen with another,
if you got one, now work on a second one, right, Jordan?
Right.
I mean, so if you already got Josh Allen or Mahomes or whatever, all right, can I get a second guy?
Totally. And when you do that, when you get 2 of them outside of injuries, you're going to make the playoffs, right?
Well, and you're taking them away from the rest of the league.
Totally.
Too. So know when you get to the playoffs, you get to those hammer games. Well, I'm not going against them.
Right.
That makes life easier.
Right.
You're like, well, I'm going against Burrow. All right. Well, I think I have an advantage there, until he puts up 50, and you're like, okay, well, that was an outlier. Yes. Try to do that again to me next year. I'll see you in the semis, my friend. All right. Next one, we got another Tyreek Hill trade here. So half PPR, and this is more about positional value and insulation. This might be a similar type discussion quickly here. So half PPR, Kyle Pitts for Tyreek Hill.
And it's no advantage for tight ends, right? Just
half PPR across the board.
Half, yeah. I think I'd probably take Pitts because I think you can. I think there's other ways to go about replicating some of what Hill can do, whereas it's really tough to replicate the upside at tight end. So that would sort of be my angle on it. Again, we talked about guys that you could potentially fill in for, Keenan Allen. I mean, heck, Mike Evans, like that type of, like, you can make it.
Can I get relatively close for the next couple of years for Tyreek Hill, and then you figure it washes out by that point? Because if this means you spend a late first and trade for Mike Evans, and now you have Pitts, because Pitts could be one where this divide between Pitts and the field could end up getting more and more as you get Kelsey. We're already seeing the divide between he and Kelsey, now that he's drifting into his 30s. And now you've got Kittle he's going to be approaching 30. You've got a lot of competition for targets there. And, Mark Andrews is later in his 20s. So you're going to have this be an issue in the next 2 or 3 years, more than it is now. And Pitts, it's half PPR. And I was going to joke, well, one of these guys only scored one touchdown. That's a big issue in half PPR. But yeah, I think Pitts will be fine in the touchdown department.
Yes,
going forward.
I agree with you.
He'll find the end zone a few more times next year. All right, we got one more, and this is paying the piper. So is this the right type of pay for the guy? Now it's paying for a high-priced wide receiver. One quarterback, Amon-Ra St. Brown, 112, and then it was a playoff team that got exited early. So I'm going to view this as 107, 108. So that range. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, 107 and 112, let's say, for Cooper Kupp.
What's the format?
One quarterback, no frills.
So this is a player that we've debated, I think. Where are you at on Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Below market, says obvious guy.
It's interesting because I sort of look at him and I'm like, I should be like all the stuff that I was super cautious coming out.
Don't say you should be all in on him.
I'm not saying all in, but I actually think I'm probably on the. I see so many people like, oh, I would take any second for him. I was like, what? You can't do that.
He's going to go high enough in drafts that, to me, that's not really accurate, I think.
Right. And so but there's people that I think are selling him short. You have to, just to fine point this for a second. Again, here, Mr. Day 3 wide receiver, right? Mr. Day 3 wide receiver coming to I feel so naked and vulnerable in this moment. I'm talking about coming in on Amon-Ra St. Brown, but you look at some of the advanced metrics on him, he's pretty good. And this year, and again, I think once you sort of do that, you start to downweight some of the pedigree. It's a hit from a rookie. In what is otherwise not a great situation. Like we saw him have some ceiling. I would say if I'm going to do this deal, like you have to be contending to win a championship in the next 2 years, and like everything you do has to be core to that.
Well, that's
right? It's sort of
you're saying that like it's like a weather report, but it's an obvious report. I mean, like, if you acquire Cooper Kupp at 29, yes, you
Right.
need to be a strong contender right now. That's your focus, and let's try to win 2 titles in a row. Yes,
right.
But
So,
here's what I would caution, though.
I'd probably not do this deal. By the way,
I don't know. I don't know about you.
would.
Well, here I've gone back and forth since writing this
Right.
down. I almost thought about it. I was like, I could argue both sides so fervently on
Right.
this because I'm not a big Amon-Ra St. Brown fan. I do think he is a sell. And these picks, let's keep in mind, it's one quarterback, and so those are not great. And we don't know. You have to roster those players, especially if you draft wide receivers at those. I mean, so there's a lot of you don't even know if you're going to get one strongly competitive season out of all those things.
Right.
And Cooper Kupp locked in his current situation. Now, coming off the magical year factor, I don't like buying off the big year. So now I wouldn't say this is like buying the huge price. Because Amon-Ra St. Brown is what? A later second that you paid a year ago, or an early third, something like that, and 2 later firsts. So it's not, but I just say, like, doing the massive, like, let me spend big. I don't like doing that. It's weird. Like, you're doing it 9 months before it matters. And Cooper Kupp is still playing.
Right.
Like, what if he gets injured in the playoffs?
And you're doing it in a position where historically it hasn't made a huge difference. Right. That's the other thing.
So all these things. So you're making a huge, big, bold, and it really is, like you said, it's like a 2-year window of like, this is really when it's going to matter the most. I'm not saying Amon-Ra St. Brown matters more than that, but just the pick. We keep going back to this, Jordan, of like, it's fine spending picks, but is this how you should spend it? Would be the argument, right? If you traded 107 for a wide receiver, what do you get?
Right. Well, you pay less for Adams, right? Like you pay less for. I mean,
no, I would think so.
Less for Tyreek Hill, right? Like, I mean, I don't know. I sort of start looking at these, and I just think, are there other ways? Again, that like Cooper Kupp's coming off the greatest season of all. You can't project that again.
Can you?
Like,
could you give those 3 pieces and like a little more and get like Justin Jefferson?
I mean, I'd rather do that. Right.
I mean, because you're venturing into like 3 first camp, right? I mean, I'm not saying like that Amon-Ra St. Brown is like a high first or 107 or 120. None of these are high first. I get that, but it's still the premise of 3 firsts. So I feel like if you just search and you go, okay, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to send out offers on Evans and Cooper and like Godwin and Diggs, and like you just go down the line and say, can I give Amon-Ra St. Brown in like 107? For it, like if you do that for all those guys, I guarantee you have a done deal by the weekend.
Right.
So you saved 112. I don't know. And I'm not sitting here saying that all those guys have the exact same ceiling of Cooper Kupp, but you're buying off the big year. You're buying a 29-year-old in January for when do you really want Cooper Kupp? Let's face it. Next December?
Right.
Because if he gets hurt in October, you are going to be pissed. Right? Right. I mean, unless Amon-Ra St. Brown falls off a cliff and those picks are complete and utter busts early, which you can't really know that. So there is a lot of ways to lose this.
Right. The other thing too is I would say, like, I think what you said about, hey, when do you want him? It's 50 weeks from now or whatever, right? I mean, it's a long time from now. You can make this deal closer in time to that. And at some point you would assume, I mean, you're at the all-time high of Cooper Kupp's cost ever right now. Like, it's even if never going to be higher than this.
Because even if you say, oh, well, then at that time, next November, when I want to make this deal, I won't have 107 and 112. Well, then why don't you figure out a way to sell those picks for 23 picks?
Correct.
So then you reset the clock. Probably one of them is going to project earlier than how these look. Right. And then you can still have liquidity and make that deal then. And then you can sell Amon-Ra St. Brown in a different deal. Maybe you can figure out a way to sell 206 this year Amon-Ra St. Brown for a 23 first as well. Right. So now you're loaded up, ready to go, and you can make whatever deals you want in season. And it'll probably be a lot more attractive, especially if Cooper Kupp declines a little bit, and then you maybe don't even make the deal, or if he's on a non-contender at that point in time.
Yeah. I'm as I sort of sit here and think about this more and more, I think I would wait to do this deal. I would look at doing this deal in a different way than.
See, this is why co-ownership is a great idea, because look at us talking through this. Like, this is what, if we receive this offer in our box of like, oh, give this stuff for Cooper Kupp, we would talk through it, and we would come up with, well, is this what we want to do, or is it a different type of deal? And that's why, sometimes you get in your own little bubble, you talk about it one way, and you're like, it's the way it has to be.
Yeah.
But the collaborative effort, there really is a lot of power in that. Totally. I want to remind you, going through the NFL playoffs here, to sign up for the Football Guys daily email update. It's straight from Joe Bryant. It's at the top right corner of the homepage there at footballguys.com. It's all the news. Once we get into free agency, we already have some players signing future contracts. We had Rex Burkhead this week re-signing on a 1-year deal. Great to see him flash late in the year with that workhorse role. And I like what Houston's been doing in terms of re-signing players or bringing in players that are savvy veterans. And that's really helped this team compete this year. And you can find out more about Davis Mills and some of these younger players because they have a nice ecosystem around them. Like Brandon Cooks, a real stabilizing force in that passing game. So those are the kind of updates you want to be up on the Dynasty news as we go through January, February. NFL playoffs, we might get significant injuries. You want Gene Bramwell weighing in on timelines to recover. And then obviously through NFL free agency. So you want to be on board with that Football Guys free email update. So some thought-provoking quotes coming out of the Dynasty Forum this week. I'm going to start with a Trey Lance one, since he is centric and will be possibly seeing a little bit of time this week. We'll see about Jimmy Garoppolo going through the playoffs healthy. Trey Lance has a low chance of developing into a quality long-term starter. I view him similar to Jalen Hurts.
I mean, the pedigree's higher, right? So you paid a top 3 costs, and they traded multiple future firsts for that. I wonder if you could have gotten, if you said, hey, listen, Garoppolo is going to play pretty well and he's going to be healthy, do you go back and do that Lance deal, right? And if you gave him true serum, would San Francisco do that Lance deal? The other thing I would sort of think about is, hey, listen, they didn't turn the keys over to him this year. Why is that? Well, arguably the greatest quarterback of our generation had the exact same thing happen to him in terms of Patrick Mahomes and Alex Smith. So I don't know what I necessarily draw from that. Ultimately, I think he has high upside, but I think you have to have a dose of skepticism with rookies who haven't done it yet. I mean, that would be the formula that I would use.
Yeah, and also know the sample size of him playing in college was very few starts. And it was not, I mean, Carson Wentz played more games, coming from a similar off-the-radar type path when you're talking 1 to 2 years before he was actually selected by the NFL. So Trey Lance has a ton of arm talent. Obviously, he can run as well. There's a lot of potential, but it's rough around the edges. And frankly, it hasn't had a lot of game action. And a lot of game action, trust me, I watched some of those Trey Lance games when he was in college. They can roll people. Like, they're the Alabama, basically, of their competitive level of college football. So he had games where he'd throw like 10 passes, 12 passes. So, and it wasn't Mac Jones in cold weather. So it's just, you have swirly weather. And so with Trey Lance, he needs time to grow. And I think it's very much what I don't like, I don't know about you, Jordan, is this dynasty cost of his is rising to a point of you're getting squeezed. He's got ceiling, but you are getting squeezed. When you start talking about top 8, top 10 type prices in the quarterback market, that is a big matzo ball of risk that he's got more allegiance, more pedigree, like you said, the investment there for Jalen Hurts, but you got to thread this needle. Because if he doesn't, I mean, there's tons of good profiles for cheaper. You got to be really careful in a startup draft, just going, I'm going to be the smartest guy. And you're going to have to take Trey Lance, early second?
Right.
I mean,
that's
it's
crazy.
Very early.
So this is one where you fix the problem. Like, if you have a problem, fix it. Right. Like, if
why take this chance in a startup draft?
Right. It's
unnecessary on this.
Right.
And it's totally almost no data points.
Right. Pay that pick and a bunch more and go get Mahomes. Right. Like, if you want to take don't or take Herbert, or take Russell, or wait and take Russell Wilson, or take Stafford, right? Take a bet that is much higher likelihood to hit, right, guys? If you take guys at the same cost that are multiple hit guys versus guys that haven't hit, it is so massively in favor of the guys that have hit twice that you're crazy.
But the fear of missing out on the next greatest thing, Jordan. It happens every once in a while.
It does.
Trey Lance might be 101. I can't say that without laughing. He might be 101 in Superflex this year. Yeah, I had a friend that it was the third round, and it's like, I think Russell Wilson's the play here. I was like, yeah, I think he is the play here.
Right.
I think you're onto something. He's the third round Superflex. You've been trading down a little bit. Yeah, they're just gifting you stuff.
I think I know the friend. I think I know.
You probably got a quarterback that's going to outproduce guys a round earlier at a premium position. So great job.
I think we have the same friend.
Great job. Many friends. Friend of the program. Wide receiver is becoming flush with young talent.
All I hear is arbitrage. That's when you say that. All I hear is arbitrade. I'm just gonna. All right, fine. You want the young potential at the position? Be my guest. I want to be the supplier. I got you right on the trade.
What I enjoy more than anything, was it last week or just 3 times in the last 3 months, that I love when you say negative things about Jamar Chase. That pleases me so much, Jordan. It is important that, as you say, it's a matter of cost. It's a matter of cost and perspective, and wildly aberrational things occurring. That's what I love. That you can just, Jamar Chase, feed that guy to the moon. That's what I love. You don't say it that way. I'll say it that way for you. But. All right.
You want to let's do it. Let's do it. All the picks. Give me all
the picks. In line with wide receiver is flush with young talent. Michael Pittman has emerged as the alpha receiver.
Of what? Of the Indianapolis.
Of the bereft and very thin Indianapolis passing game.
He beat out Zach Pascal, which is notable.
Can I tell you one thing that hurt my soul? When I heard multiple shows talking about how Carson Wentz killed them this past game, and no one mentions Paris Campbell dropping 2 long passes right in his old breadbasket. Paris Campbell, he was back, and I was actually kind of excited. This is a lid lifter that flashed a little bit, lost time, I think, with 2 straight years with injuries, significant time. And he gets back in there and just alligator, my arms don't touch 2 balls that at points in games where it could change the game. It could change how things look. And it's like, it's Michael Pittman. And then, T.Y. Hilton has provided nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I like Pittman.
Look around, there's no one else here.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The phrasing of the question is really funny because it's like, of what, right? I like him for what he is. I wouldn't get crazy about him in terms of top 12.
Well, is he Cortland Sutton of let's not get ahead of our skis too quick. Mm-hmm. Let's not assume a wide receiver 20s kind of finish in before age 25 means you're on track for great historical things.
Right. Take the guys that we could say all these things about and put them in a pile, and it's 20 names. And you're like, all right, maybe 5 of them it actually happens, right? So you got to be really careful about elevating them up. I think the funniest thing, literally the funniest thing about Dynasty scores this year is the difference in points between Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb. Do you want to guess how many points there's a difference between CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks this year?
It's funny either way. If Cooks has actually outproduced him, or if the answer is 0.8, it's funny either way. But
funny how? Funny I amuse you? What about you think I'm funny?
Well, funny because Cooks is now drifting into the wilderness of the 30s, and he's never coming back in Dynasty cost. The fact that you can get him as your wide receiver 4 is laughable. Who did he
1 point?
One singular point.
One singular.
And CeeDee Lamb is transcendent, and Brandon Cooks is a roster clogger.
Correct.
If you were to categorize them,
and just think about what the net return of that would be, right? What
How many firsts?
Right, like give me all the firsts, right? Give me first this year, next year, right? You could have gotten multiple firsts.
Actually, you could you get Brandon Cooks in that Cooper Kupp deal? Probably. Cooper Kupps instead of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Sorry. Yeah, Cooks instead of Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah.
He's 29. He's not dead.
No, you would think. I mean, but we keep writing. It's the same cycle, right? Everyone keeps writing, wide
productive
receiver
players off too quickly.
Well, because we want and guys that aren't really that productive early, slotting them in as transcendent, right? You take guys at 23 that finish at wide receiver 14, and we make them.
They're all over. Yeah, they have to be great. They will be great no matter what.
Or you just take the great guy who's been great for a long time and just continue to think he's probably going to be great. Mike Evans.
That was my whole AJ Brown thing. I said we have a guy that's outproduced this guy's best season over and over and over again. And then we've got somebody that's done one season of relevancy and it wasn't even high impact. And you want to say that he's going to be great. This whole, I need to get the young wide receiver because I'm going to be so smart because I'm going to have them for the next 5 years and they're going to be good for 5 years. No, Mike Evans was good for 5 years in a row. That doesn't. Julio Jones was great for 5 years in a row.
Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Right.
You want to sharpshoot? Let's take every wide receiver. You have to pick 3 of them. I'll give you 15 guys and you have to pick 3 that are going to be good, quote unquote good, all the way through for the next even 3 or 4 years. Good freaking luck.
Yeah.
There's going to be so many false positives. So many Fugazi alphas. God.
Yeah.
That drives me up the wall.
Yeah.
And you know what really made this possible is on my
really grinds my gears.
You know what really gets me in the giblets? Jordan's reacting like that's the first time he's ever heard that phrase. Giblets, that's a fun word. No, it's because I added my career arc stuff right next to where I literally adjust my rankings. So now every single time when I did my season adjustments, every time I'm going to put a guy higher or I'm thinking of let's move within this tier. I look and I'm like, if this guy, their best season is not better than 2 or 3 of these other guys, I will not do it. I absolutely will not. That makes 0 sense. And that means I have Diontae Johnson higher than I might have had without doing that practice. Because you know what? Diontae Johnson has a top 10 season and another season in the top 20. And that's better than a lot of these jamokes. And by jamokes, I mean guys that are either one-offs or they haven't been a wide receiver even one time in their career. What are we doing?
Right. Diontae Johnson, it's funny because you just say, hey, let's put player profile.
Targets are valuable. You said one show, you said targets are valuable. You're like, players earn targets.
Right.
Especially if they do it for multiple
seasons. That's all he does is get targeted.
He happens to run 3-yard routes from a guy that loves to throw 3-yard route targets, but that aligns.
That's 1.3 points. That's great. That's all. That's what we want.
Plus yak. Plus hopefully a little yak.
Right. It's funny in tight end premiums, it'll be like, oh, it's a 1 yard out to Tyler Higbee. And it's like, hey, you say a 1 yard out. All I see is 2.1 points.
Right. but Chris Godwin's another one, right? I mean, so people thrust him through the moon when he was wide receiver 2 a few years ago. Then what does he do? Wide receiver 24 by my measures. Wide receiver 24. What does he do this year? Wide receiver 8. And now what do we do? Fade him to the moon. So he has 2 top 8 hit seasons, and he's not he's 26, and that's what we need to fade him. And who do we need to fade him for? Oh, I don't know. Guys like CeeDee Lamb, it's mind blowing.
Totally.
Actually, wait. Oh, we're gonna put Devonta Smith over him. Let's make that even better. Let's do it even better. Oh, questions about the quarterback? One rookie season. Outside wide receiver 30. Let's do all this. I'm here for all of it.
Right. God. Sometimes this game isn't that hard, and sometimes it's just finding these patterns that the market loves to do.
But now it's going to piss me off because I go to my ranking spreadsheet all the time, and now that I put their career arc stuff right next to it, it's just like hit yourself over the head with the Nerf bat. Like you're just like, no, this is like, I have ADP, I've got the career arc stuff, and I've got all the stuff that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
I'm like Lewis Black now. Like all he does is yell. All Lewis does, he has a career out of yelling. He's like, it's corn that tastes like candy. He's probably your favorite comedian because he's from New York, right? Like I can relate. Every year, like an Alzheimer's patient, I try it. I'm like, son of a, tastes like soap. All right, I've got one more here. Exercise patience, but don't clog up a valuable roster spot too long. Trust your analysis, but be willing to reassess as you glean more data. This was referencing moving on from rookie picks and rookies that you just don't have positive vibes, and they get very near your roster fringe very, very quickly.
I 100% agree with that statement.
Be wrong faster. Is that accurate? Don't be Jeff Janis. Be wrong faster.
Be wrong faster, right? Be like, I pivoted off of Trey Sermon. Like one of the big misses this year was Trey Sermon. Yeah, it's not a dynasty league per se. It's more keeper. So like, I wasn't going to, it became very apparent I wasn't going to be able to keep him. So I got multiple assets for him in the draft or whatever. But I did it quick, and I was like, listen, like, oh, they still think he's the running back of the future. That's fine. Like, he can take that bet. I'll get off of it. Be wrong quick. Like, I think that's a really good way to do it. And don't be the Jeff Janis thing. Don't. Well,
that was just a horrible pick. Like to pick that. I go back and laugh. Some of these wide receivers I took in like the 4th round of a rookie draft. You should realistically not take running backs ever in that spot. Because the likelihood that they flash enough or there's enough promise that you want to hold
wide receiver
on by
or running backs?
What's that? Receiver. You should never take receiver in that spot.
Right.
I mean, trade the pick or just flip it for the future. If it's 410, you flip it for a future 4th. If it's 401, you try to get a future 3rd just to kick it. And if there's some running back landing spot or some depth chart where you're like, or you take a veteran. Like there's so many times in like veteran free agents are available in your rookie draft where it makes more sense. You get like a Darrell Williams sometimes, just totally. Like, let me try to get a backup running back because that's what you're kind of trying to do in the spot, but taking a day 3 late sort of pick. Oh my God. You're rubbing it all over the place. Is there another, can you think of, you mentioned Trey Sermon, but is there it feels like the first couple rounds, you probably shouldn't be in that situation in Dynasty, but can you think of like, I pivoted early and whether or not it was like the right call in retrospect, but you're like, I got off them early and I was definitive in what my action plan was for that.
I used Mac Jones as a pivot. It became clear to me that like, hey, he's like doing well and he might be, for a team that's not contending, could fill a potential need for him. And I'm going to sharpshoot the next couple of years to try and win this thing. So I used him in that way, but I don't think that's necessarily the question. I was more like, hey, let's just cash this in really quick. I can't think of really good examples of places where I've missed like that. Like Trey Sermon's that's a big miss in terms of I didn't expect that to happen. I can't really think of one where I've done it at that cost and had to pivot that quickly. But I think if you can, right? But I wouldn't bail for a 4th either. You know what I mean?
I'm actually surprised. I'm looking back at my trade database, and I traded for as high as I was on Trey Sermon, and I drafted him a bunch. Between May and November, I traded him away 4 times. Which is a decent number for me. And I think that does speak to the same thing that you were referencing of just like get out. Like I traded Sermon after I drafted him. I traded Sermon a 2nd and a 3rd for Lockett and a 1st in one spot. And that was right after the rookie draft or maybe as I was still going on. Another spot I flipped him for wide receiver help, one of them being Laviska Shenault. It hasn't really worked out, but TB, I mean, neither guy am I out. And then another one was Cam Akers after the injury, and I was contending heavily, and Trey Sermon and Reagor. So I got out on 2 guys, that might not be on a really good path. And Akers at that point, we had no idea. He came back, and just shout out to him, right? Like he should get comeback of the player of the year award this year for getting back into a game. And I got Dylan and Amari Cooper for that. So for the contending team. But yeah, so I think realizing it early And, some of those positive or not positive indicators out of year one, or especially the first couple of years, if they still have value. Now, if they're in the tank, I mean, like if you're saying Reagor's worth a fourth, I mean, you just hold on to them. But like I like the package method of going like 2 for 1, 3 for 2, 3 for 1, of like, give me something I can really use. And then I'm fine kind of dealing away guys that may turn into nothing and they're just not on a good path.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I think especially as we play some of these formats, like the rosters are narrow, right? 28 man, if you're playing super flex, you're playing tight end premium, you're trying to roster a lot of
and
backups.
You're collecting
it's
running
not a lot
backs,
of room.
No,
it's not a lot. It seems like a lot of room when you sign up and you play a year, and then
so if you don't see the alpha stuff out of the wide receiver and you're just like, it's my wide receiver 7, I got to get out of here and I got to figure out a way. And it's not necessarily, I think a lot of people think bailing is like, well, give me the rookie pick and straight up. I mean, it could be a rookie pick upgrade where you're moving into another tier, another strata for you. It could just be moving up in the rookie draft because you think that pick, you can now flip it for something else later. Or it can just be, again, getting some undervalued profile. Is that trying to buy Robert Woods right now? Or just because I think there's the prospect of that being more usable down the line than 2 pieces, or just little angles like that. Like you said, I mean, it can make a big difference because not many leagues can you really stretch your elbows and you're like, I'm in business class here. This is roomy. I got plenty of space with roster. I mean, because even we were in a 40-man roster, and I swear, like at times there's tough cuts.
Yeah.
Tough cuts, or it's just like status quo, can't make a move, can't do it. And that's 40 man.
Right. Right.
So
it's like, I really don't want to cut Kobe. Like, there's a chance that Kobe Parkinson could be the starting tight end next year. Like,
I will say, didn't we trade him away? I got a little.
I think so.
I started seeing him play a little bit in week 18. And I reminded myself, I was like, it's week 18. Preseason. Doesn't mean anything. He's not going to be a thing. His hair might be a thing, but I don't think he's going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Starter week 1.
Yeah.
All right. So jam-packed show. Jordan, we know it's the off season because we hit the don't ever go over an hour quota.
We did it. Smashed
Sorry,
it.
Joe. Sorry, Cecil. We did it. We got excited. I actually was going to say we overplanned. I know it's my fault. We overplanned. I should have skipped tight end. Darn it.
It's okay. It's all right.
Well, we did talk Irv Smith. We talked Joe Burrow. We also talked AJ Brown. Who's the running back again? It was an hour ago. Javonte Williams. That's honestly who I would have picked as well. Like-minded there. We talked about some dynasty trades, talked about ways to consolidate, insulate yourself, and talked about Tyreek Hill and a couple of those, Amon St. Brown among them. So until next, again, this is going to be a great NFL playoff. Shout out to the Raiders. Derek Carr, first playoff game coming this week. And team underrated. Let's hope they give the Bengals a good old-fashioned run for their money this coming week. I am Chad Parsons. Here's Jordan McNamara. And until next time, good luck in your dynasty leagues. From downtown.
A little short.
More downtown. Clay.